The Chernobyl Disaster. On 26 April 1986, the world changed forever. A terrible accident happened at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in northern Ukraine. It was the worst nuclear disaster in history. The explosion released deadly radiation, affected millions of people, and left an entire city abandoned. The disaster was a mix of human error, flawed design, and secrecy. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Chernobyl was once a small town, but it became famous because of its nuclear power plant. The plant had 4 reactors, with plans to build 2 more. It provided electricity to millions of people. In the Soviet Union, nuclear energy was seen as a great achievement. It was a sign of power and progress. However, the reactors had serious design flaws that were ignored. The plant workers followed strict schedules. They operated heavy machinery, monitored controls, and kept the reactors running. Everything seemed normal. No one knew that Reactor 4 had a deadly flaw that would soon be exposed. The day before the disaster, 25 April 1986, was just another day at Chernobyl. The workers arrived, checked the equipment, and began their tasks. But on this day, a special test was planned. The test was meant to check if Reactor 4 could operate during a power outage. It had been delayed before, but this time, the managers insisted it be completed. The test required lowering the reactor's power. However, the operators made mistakes. They did not follow safety procedures. They disabled important safety systems. The reactor became unstable, but they did not stop the test. Hours passed, and the situation worsened. The explosion. At 1:23 a.m. on 26 April 1986, disaster struck. A sudden surge of power created intense heat. The uranium fuel rods inside the reactor shattered. Steam built up at an extreme rate. Then, a massive explosion tore through Reactor 4. A second explosion followed, sending chunks of radioactive material into the sky. A giant fireball shot upward. The explosion was so powerful that it blew off the reactor's steel and concrete lid, which weighed over 1,000 tons. Radiation poured out. It spread through the wind, unseen but deadly. The first responders. Within minutes, firefighters rushed to the scene. They had no protective gear. They did not know what they were dealing with. Flames covered the reactor. Smoke filled the sky. They climbed onto the burning roof, using water to put out the fire. The radiation level was extremely high. Some firefighters collapsed immediately. Others worked until their bodies could not take it anymore. They became the first victims of Chernobyl. Pripyat, a city in danger. A few kilometers away, the city of Pripyat was still asleep. It was home to 50,000 people, including many plant workers and their families. The city was modern and lively. There were schools, parks, and busy streets. People had no idea that an invisible danger was creeping through the air. By morning, the first signs of trouble appeared. People woke up with headaches, nausea, and a strange metallic taste in their mouths. Radiation had already poisoned the air. Yet, life in Pripyat continued as usual. Children played outside. Workers went to their jobs. The government did not warn them. At noon, radiation levels were dangerously high. Soldiers and scientists arrived. They measured the radiation and realized the city had to be evacuated. But Soviet officials hesitated. They did not want to admit that something had gone terribly wrong. The evacuation. Finally, on 27 April, at 2 p.m., the evacuation order was given. Buses arrived. Loudspeakers announced that residents should take only essential items. They were told they would return in a few days. People packed quickly, leaving behind pets, belongings, and memories. Families boarded buses, unaware that they would never see their homes again. Pripyat became a ghost town in just a few hours. Toys, dishes, and clothes remained untouched. The Ferris wheel in the amusement park, meant to open soon, never carried children. The city stood frozen in time. The Soviet cover-up. The Soviet government tried to hide the truth. They did not want to show weakness. At first, they claimed the situation was under control. But radiation does not follow political rules. The radioactive cloud traveled across Europe. Countries like Sweden and Germany detected unusual radiation levels. The world demanded answers. On 28 April, Soviet officials finally admitted that an accident had occurred. But they did not reveal the full extent of the disaster. The truth slowly emerged. The world was horrified. The liquidators, heroes of Chernobyl. Thousands of soldiers, scientists, and workers were sent to clean up the site. They were called liquidators. Their job was to remove radioactive debris, contain the reactor, and stop further contamination. They worked in extreme conditions, often with little protection. Many suffered from radiation sickness. They risked their lives to prevent an even bigger disaster. Helicopters dropped sand and boron onto the reactor to control the radiation. Robots were sent in to clear debris, but most failed due to high radiation levels. In the end, humans had to do the work. One of the most dangerous tasks was clearing radioactive graphite from the reactor roof. Each worker could stay for only seconds before receiving a deadly dose of radiation. Despite the risks, they did their duty. Many of them later died from radiation exposure. The long-term effects. The consequences of Chernobyl were devastating. Many people developed cancer and other illnesses. Children were born with birth defects. The land remained poisoned. Thousands of villages were abandoned. A concrete sarcophagus was built over Reactor 4 to contain the radiation. But it was only a temporary solution. In 2016, a massive steel structure called the New Safe Confinement was placed over the reactor. It is designed to last 100 years. But the danger will remain for thousands of years. Chernobyl today. More than 3 decades later, Chernobyl is still dangerous, but life has returned in unexpected ways. Nature has reclaimed the area. Wild animals, including wolves, deer, and bears, now roam the abandoned city. Scientists study how radiation affects wildlife. Ironically, the absence of humans has allowed nature to flourish. Tourists now visit Chernobyl. They walk through the silent streets of Pripyat, exploring the ruins. They see the decaying apartment buildings, the abandoned schools, and the empty amusement park. It is a haunting reminder of the disaster. Some former residents have returned. A few elderly people moved back to their homes. They live in isolation, growing food in radioactive soil. They know the risks, but they refuse to leave again. To them, Chernobyl is home. Lessons from Chernobyl. Chernobyl changed the world's view of nuclear energy. It exposed the dangers of poor safety standards and government secrecy. Many countries improved their nuclear safety regulations. Some abandoned nuclear power altogether. The disaster showed that human mistakes could lead to unimaginable consequences. But it also revealed courage. The firefighters, liquidators, scientists, and doctors who risked their lives to save others should never be forgotten. Their sacrifices prevented an even greater catastrophe. Never forget. Chernobyl is a story of tragedy, heroism, and resilience. It is a reminder of what happens when safety is ignored and truth is hidden. It is also a warning for the future. We must remember Chernobyl. We must learn from it. We must ensure that such a disaster never happens again.